So I was very aware of the challenges around it and everything. One of the first things I said to him in our initial meetings was that it would depend, the success of the project would really depend on the actresses. And I think we need to listen to what audiences want. You know, we're always trying to innovate and we're always trying to develop new styles, techniques, and things like that. But ultimately, we need to pay attention to what the audiences are reacting to. I mean, the Bollywood side of things is quite inspirational because the systems over here work with very limited budgets and very
Mm.
limited time, but you have an incredibly powerful people, a group of people who are very ambitious and very determined to make a really big project.
Hi everyone, this is Kunal Kothari. You're watching me on IWMBuzz. Sitting with me is a person who's now synonymous to probably the most exhilarating action sequences and design you have seen in the Hindi film industry lately. And he's none other than Craig Macrae. Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Fantastic,
Uh,
Craig. Before I get into the obvious questions, I want to ask something right away.
yes.
If I'm not wrong, you started with Force 2, right? Force 2 was perhaps your first Indian film.
Yeah, that was one of the first Bollywood films that I did. I think my first ever Bollywood would have been Jaga Jasus, which was a very
Oh,
long time ago.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then I
It
did
is
Force
quite
2
great.
and
Yeah.
Commander 2. Yeah, so Jaga Jasus came to South Africa. We shot quite a lot of the sequences there. We were very lucky. We went up to a farmyard in the middle of South Africa, and we used that
Right.
gentleman's private trains to do a whole sequence there. Very good fun.
Fabulous, yeah. The reason I asked that is, it's fun to think that you started with Jaga Jasoos, and of course, Forced to happen right after. Now,
Mm.
9 years later, in fact, a decade later, you've done more work in the Indian film industry than probably you've done. What you obviously did the Avengers, Ultron. You obviously did Mad Max Fury Road and everything. But now you've been consistent with Indian films. What has it been with these films and the teams that you worked with, which is constantly led you to come back and do more work?
The Bollywood industry is incredible in that it's changing and evolving very, very quickly. So when we started our company, I'd already worked with quite a few of the producers from various shows while I was still working in my Hollywood career and everything. I met quite a few people there who are part of the Bollywood system, and they brought us on very quickly. Myself and my wife and my entire team, we all worked together, and the producers from those films like Jawan, Pathaan, all of those projects, they all picked us up very quickly and they hung on to us. They were like, "You guys are going to come and work with us." So we've been consistently working in Bollywood for the past 6 or 7 years. And
Yeah.
it's been an incredible ride. I mean, the Bollywood side of things is quite inspirational because the systems over here work with very limited budgets and very
Mm.
limited time, but you have an incredibly powerful people, a group of people who are very ambitious and very determined to make a really big project, no matter the restrictions or the limitations. And that's quite an exciting environment to work in. You know, oftentimes in the Hollywood scenario, we have a lot more time and a lot more money to be able to do things. But as a result, people are not pushed as hard to be as innovative or to be as problem solving. So
Right.
it's very fun working in Bollywood because no matter the challenge, we have a huge team of people that are always determined to overcome those issues, no matter the restrictions, and that's a fun environment to work in, you know?
Yeah, lovely, lovely. That's true, absolutely. And coming to, of course, not just Skyforce, but I think what's fascinating for me when it comes to action directors and stunt designers and the entire team, the obvious challenges are for people to see as well. You're working
Yeah.
with so many limited resources, the budgets, as you mentioned. I feel that the kind of action we see in films like Jawan, Pathaan, you've seen it. You're just trying to innovate it because you see
Yes.
the hand-to-hand combat, you see the flying men here and there, but what I've believe is that your challenge as an as a person who's associated with action and designing it overall would have been so much with the likes of Mad Max Fury Road and in this context with Skyforce, because you're dealing with
Yes.
elements of nature You're dealing with sand on the one hand, you're dealing with air and skies on the other. I think it must
Yeah,
be so challenging because you don't anticipate the things that can go wrong as you can in the other, aspects. So is there has
yeah.
was it a factor for you with these projects as well? And how did you manage to, overcome, crazy mishaps?
One of the biggest priorities for me is to make sure that everything is safe. That's one of my main reasons for being there. So yes, the designing is fun, and the creation of all of these different elements for various movies is great fun. But on the other side of it, on the serious side of it, we have to make sure that we can execute these things in the safest way possible. Nobody wants to get injured or have their life changed just because of a movie or anything like that.
Right.
So we always prioritize safety above all else. So it does become difficult, obviously, because every movie has its own set of challenges. And generally, on every movie, we're trying to push the envelope. We're trying to do
Mm.
things, new techniques for filming, new fight styles, new everything. So it does come with its own set of challenges on every project, but we take an approach of analyzing exactly what we design and what we want to achieve, and then finding out, kind of working it backwards and working out how we're going to achieve that in the safest possible way. So it's a lot of fun because it keeps you engaged. You're not doing the same thing every time. It's not like saying, okay, well, if we're doing this fight this way and we know we can do it safely like that, it doesn't necessarily mean you can apply it to the new project in the same way.
Right.
Obviously, we use the foundations of all of the safety procedures that we use. We always do things like risk assessments, and we analyze all of the risk that's involved in each sequence. But then, of course, we have to adapt it for what we're planning on doing, and use a lot of our own initiative to create safety systems around it to make sure that we can achieve these things in the safest possible way.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And because on similar lines, has there been a kind of a mishap? I say mishap for a lack of a better word, because sometimes, as you mentioned, you can plan everything. Everything
Yeah,
is, to the T, but what has to go wrong will go wrong. And that happens
yeah.
with the best of people, with the people who are even starting. So what has been a learning for you, not just for Skyforce, but overall throughout your thing, that this mishap made me learn, and I will make sure that that never happens again?
Yeah, look, I mean, in any industry, of course, you're going to have mishaps and things that happen that teach you a lesson, and offer a bit of a tippet for a or an impetus for you to change for the future and to adapt. Touch wood, we've never had anything very serious happen because of our diligence when it comes to
Yeah.
safety. We've been very, very focused on making sure that we don't have any serious injuries or anything like that. So we've never been in that position where we have to fundamentally look at things, but of course we always have small mishaps and things that happen,
Yeah.
and particularly when you're working very quickly and under a lot of pressure, things can go wrong. So you have to analyze those mistakes, and of course use them in your formula for the future, so that you can try and mitigate all of those types of risks. It's
Yeah.
an ever evolving practice. That's something that I think every action director, stunt person in the world, that is a big challenge for them, is to look at new things that you intend on achieving, and making sure that you can break it down, use your experience from the past, and adapt new systems so that you can manage the risk and mitigate risk.
Fabulous. True. And, of course, now coming to the fantastic names that you've worked with, in these films that we've been talking about. People, I'm sure by now that you've spent a decade here, the outer, approach as well. And, the outer sort of reception for these people as well. People know that, and they expect the likes of Akshay Kumar, Vidyu Jamwal, Tiger Shroff to be action fanatics and be good at what they're doing. So I
Yeah.
guess that is obviously a given for you as well, because you've been working with them. What I want to know from you is, who surprised you the most in the most pleasant way possible throughout all these projects that you've done?
Excuse me. Um,
Please.
the person that made the biggest impression on me was probably Shah Rukh Khan.
Mm-hmm.
Shah Rukh is an incredible professional, an incredible human being. He really stood out for me. He's very, very good at action as well. He's a highly intelligent person. So And of course, he has a decades and decades of experience with film. You know, he's an inspirational person like that. But he picks up on action and on storytelling in action so quickly. You know, we could have designed something, and we've spent a lot of time busy putting it together and creating this thing for him. And then he'll come along during a rehearsal or while we're busy executing it, and he'll say to me, "Hey, I've got this little bit that I could offer this, or we could try and adapt this to bring more of the character through in the action like this." And usually that suggestion is 100% spot on, and he'll blow me away, and I'll be like, "Oh wow, okay, that's brilliant. We didn't think of that. Let's integrate this piece and let's use
Yeah,
this." And then he has the ability to bring that adaptation to the screen like this. So,
lovely.
and of course, he made a very strong impression on me as well because he's just an incredible human being. Yeah, you know, I've never worked with an actor before who remembers the name of the person who's getting
Yeah,
him a coffee or opening the door, or you know, he is that guy. He'll walk into a
yeah,
studio and make sure that everybody has had a good morning. And he's
lovely.
on time, like you can't believe, and he knows exactly what he's supposed to do. He's an incredible actor to work with and a phenomenal human being. So he probably made the biggest impression on me.
Yeah, that is definitely everyone's, common
Hmm.
expression and common, what do you call it?
Feeling
Like
about him,
everybody
yeah.
loves him for the way it is, and that just
Hmm.
makes absolute sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Lovely. And now, of course, you also have Alpha in the works,
Yes,
which is also a huge, huge actioner. And of
yes,
course, it is not just the fact. Of course, you worked in war as well, so you are, and of course in Pathaan, so you know that
hmm.
how this YRF spy universe is operating. What are the kind of
Yes,
continuations that will come, and but the thing is that
yeah,
now we have female superstars who are doing these
yes,
bonkers action. For me, for
yeah,
someone like you, for I
yeah,
think working on Mad Max and everything that you worked in the past, you've been obviously very used to working with the likes of Charlize Theron and everyone who
yes,
it's never been a factor that okay, female actors are doing action. Here it is still very nascent, and now we are taking these not just baby steps but big steps towards
yeah.
female actors like stars doing action. How do
Hmm.
you see that evolution here happening, and what has been your approach towards it now that you're doing Alpha with Alia and Sharvari?
I was briefed before we started on Alpha. You know, the Adi, the producer, he sat me down and he said, "Look, this is a sector that we really want to try and develop. That's something that we want to bring to the market because we feel like it's going to it will have a huge amount of support for a new genre of females in action." And he also warned me that it hadn't really successfully been done before in Bollywood.
Right.
So I was very aware of the challenges around it and everything. One of the first things I said to him in our initial meetings was that it would depend, the success of the project would really depend on the actresses and how much work they were willing to put into it and how much time they were going to dedicate to making sure that they were fit and ready and mentally in the right place for this movie. And of course, he communicated that on to the ladies and gave them every single opportunity for them to be able to be
Mm,
ready. We got a professional stunt trainer. His name is Jason, a very cool guy from the States. He came out months before we even got out there as the stunt team, and he started laying the foundations. So he
lovely.
did all of their base work, got their footwork right, taught them how to strike correctly, basics of all of the weapon work, put them in wires. And the ladies delivered 110%. They were there for every single session. They left there with bruises and with sore bodies, but they came back the next day. And when we got there, we had nearly 2 months with them as well to really push them and teach them all of the choreography, teach them all of the skills or build on the skills that Jason had already started working on them with. And they were so determined. They were actually asking us, "Oh, can we come and rehearse some more?" Because we had lots of other work to do. Obviously, we were busy designing this whole thing. But they came to us and they were like, "Can we rehearse some more?" So I think that Sharvari and Alia have given it 110%, and I think that's going to translate to the action you see on screen. They were really dedicated. They worked very, very hard for it. Myself and my team, we worked very hard as well. I had a great team of very dedicated, very highly skilled professionals. The stunt doubles for the girls also worked very hard and helped support the actresses in all of their fight work and everything. So I think that formula is going to create a really beautiful cake, if you want to call it that. It's
Fabulous.
going to be it's going to upset the industry in a very good way.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's all sounds so fantastic, and I'm sure no everybody's just already dying to watch it as soon as
Mm,
possible. And finally, Craig, on a parting note, as someone, as I mentioned, who's now spent a decade and of course consistently doing work for 6 years, 7 years here in the industry, you've
yeah.
seen evolution as we started off, talking about evolution. But
Mm.
as someone who's obviously not going anywhere anytime soon, and we wouldn't want you to go as well, how do you look at the future for action in Indian films? Like, we've seen drastic changes when it comes to budgets. We are seeing these
Yeah.
minuscule changes when it comes to, okay, someone is willing to spend a little more, take a little bigger risk, but it's still
Mm.
not those gigantic steps or huge leaps everybody's taking. So
Mm.
considering that process is slower, how do you see we can still manage to evolve and still as people keep terming it, that reach those levels where all international films stand at the same spectrum?
So I think it depends on a couple of things. First and foremost is that I think we need to listen to what audiences want. We're always trying to innovate and we're always trying to develop new styles, techniques, and things like that. But ultimately, we need to pay attention to what the audiences are reacting to. I think that story and narrative is one of the most important things. I'm an action designer. My work is action, so obviously, the more action, the better for me. But what I've seen throughout my career, and something that is very dear to me as somebody who got into this industry to tell stories, the story is the most important thing. If the action doesn't support the story, if it's not driven by the story, audiences don't tend to react
Right.
too well. We've done big action blockbusters where the whole movie was just action from front to back, and it was a huge spectacle. And sure, some people enjoy that because it's a visual spectacle and it's some
Yeah.
fun in terms of action. But if it isn't driven by a powerful narrative or a strong story, then it generally doesn't have the same kind of commercial success as something like Pathaan or anything like that. So I
Right.
think we need to listen to our audiences, stick to the storytelling, and make sure that we're telling stories that resound with people and that will maybe reshape their entire perception of their world, or a preconceived idea that they might have, and then use things like action, VFX, all of those tools to support a story that will change people's minds and that will create a new perception of their worlds, or and help them in some way. So I think focus on the story and everything else will follow.
Fabulous. That's such a refreshing take from a person. As you mentioned, you are an action guy, but you're focusing on the story. So that is just phenomenal that you have that take. Fabulous, Craig. Thank you so much for your time. It really
Thank
means a
you.
lot. And I mean, as I mentioned, everybody's waiting for Alpha and everything that you've lined up ahead. So all the
Fantastic.
best, and keep growing. And I think everybody's just gonna keep enjoying themselves.
Thank you very much. Thanks for a great interview.
Thank you. Thank you. All the
All right.
best. Thank you.